It's pretty easy to send. Like they do an audio version, they do another, and then they show like the full-on video version.
All right, it is recording.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Oh, I'm gonna double check the chat feature too to see.
Yeah, Aaron, I sent that email out yesterday. I think it probably would have been around 10 or 11 a.m. that had the background in it.
Yeah, my work sends a block all images that are coming through, so then I have to, so if I don't notice it, I don't know. But, yeah.
Okay, so quick thing, Michael and Bruce, I did make it chat with host only. I think that's probably the safest way since we have it open to the public.
Okay.
And you're gonna chime in with questions from that?
Yes. Probably what I'll do is I'll just raise my hand if it sounds like it's hard to break in. But otherwise I'll just try to jump in and just say that so-and-so asked a question and then say it. Okay, I'm going to pop out for just a second, but I'll be right here.
Yeah, this is so weird. Michael, I don't see your email at 10 a.m.
Well, let me see.
Wonder if you're using the A Williams again. I don't know. Or it just somehow they just don't, my work just doesn't like you, I guess. I don't know. Just kidding.
I'm sending it to you right now.
Okay, thanks.
All by itself.
I don't necessarily need it. I don't want to, cause all this trouble. So
It's actually a pretty big file. So I just now attached it and it's still chewing on it. So
okay, that's fine.
But yeah, you'll have to make sure your work lets this image through. It's 2,800 kilobytes. So that's
Okay.
kind of big.
All right. Yeah, either way, it's fine. Who did the image? It's pretty awesome. Michael, was that you?
Yeah, I
Nice.
just grabbed something online and threw the logo on it.
Like, oh, it's nothing. I just did that real quick. That's awesome. It looks really good.
Hey, Hal. And hello, Katie Odell. I see you there as well. That's actually my wife, so I got to be on really good behavior here, guys.
Yeah, I kind of gave her the third degree because she sent an email and just said Katie, or it didn't even say Katie Odell, but it said that in the Gmail email. So I said, could I have your first and last name, please? Because I don't know who you are. And then she told me who she was.
Oh, I should have done that with the people I invited. I just told them the Zoom thing. They're all trustworthy, but
Yeah.
I can email them right now and they should have.
No, don't worry. It's fine.
Hey there, Matt.
I'll recognize their name.
Hey there, Matthew. Thanks for joining us.
Well,
thank you for the invite.
Okay, she uploaded. Well, yeah. And Aaron, here comes the email to you.
Great. I'll keep an eye out for it.
hey there, Jill.
Jill?
Hey, Michael. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Hey, Jill, how's it going?
Good, good.
Hey, Hal.
Oh, hey, Hal. How are you?
Hey, Paul.
I'll tell this small group since everybody isn't here yet, but my brother and sister-in-law, my sister-in-law especially, is a huge Star Wars fan. She's gone to the conventions and she's had signatures and she has all the figurines from the 1970s. I mean, she's probably the biggest fan I know. When they got married a number of years ago, their wedding date happened to fall on May the 4th. So I just sent them a quick email to invite them to this and also to wish them a happy anniversary. They're crazy.
Very cool.
Is it their 4th wedding anniversary now?
I think it's probably their 17th by now.
Oh,
Hey there, Jeff. Welcome to the party.
I got it, Bruce, by the way.
okay.
Oh, good.
Thank
So
you.
you have to put that in a folder somewhere and then go to your virtual background, which is in the upper right corner of, wait, where is it?
I can figure it out. I'm sure
Okay.
I'll get there eventually.
Gotta put it in a folder first before it, then tell Zoom where to go
Yeah,
get it.
you just need to get to that gear. On mine, it's in the upper left corner settings.
Gotcha.
You're looking for the settings gear. All right, actually, you start with a little green shield.
All right.
Didn't even know about the green shield.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Jeff.
Hey there.
Welcome, sir.
How you doing?
Doing great. Looking forward to some awesome.
I'm
conversation.
representing.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
That's great.
Unlike Matthew,
How's
I don't have
everybody
any
doing?
Star Wars here. Good job, Matthew. Way to represent.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. What was that?
I said, good job representing with the Star Wars shirt.
Oh yeah, gotta celebrate May the 4th.
Yes.
Also happy to see some RPF members here. Man, I don't know how many will show up, but that's pretty cool to see. I mean, I know there's a lot of hardcore enthusiasts over there for this stuff. So
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
I joined from RPF, so that's how I knew about this event.
Hey, that must be fun.
Hello.
Hi, I don't think I've ever met you, whether in person or virtual space. So welcome.
Thank you.
Here's Lanson.
What's that?
Here's Lanson.
I'm sorry, I can barely hear you. I don't know why.
Oh, I think he was just saying that Lance and Emerson just joined from Garmin.
Got it.
yeah, it looks like we got quite a good group coming in at this point. So welcome to everybody that we haven't said hi to yet.
Yes. So maybe we'll give it a couple minutes for people to join and then I can do the introductions.
And look at Fawn repping that R2D2 back there. Wow.
Oh, nice.
Just dropping that cred immediately. That's amazing.
He's invited to all my calls. It only took me 20 years to finish that one.
The best thing about Star Wars is you didn't read a book first, so you didn't have preconceived notions about what stuff is supposed to look like, which happened on Lord of the Rings and all kinds of other movies and things.
Oh, right. Yeah, true. That's a
R2D2
good
is
point.
wrong. He's supposed to look more like a haha, there wasn't one.
Looks like I'm gonna have internet problems today, so I'm gonna turn my video off. Fun, Jeff, thanks guys for doing this for us, and I'm here. Just gonna close down the video.
No problem. Thank you.
Where does she live? In the middle of nowhere?
You betcha, Jeff.
Hey, Jill,
I'm on 16 acres in the absolute middle of nowhere.
Jill, I would be remiss by not telling you to use the force.
Yeah, I am waiting for Starlink. I have my deposit in. I can't wait for it to come. So that's as close to the force as I can get. So
It was the same way in San Jose till like 4 years ago. I couldn't get good internet. It was ridiculous. I do now though.
That close to Silicon Valley and you couldn't get decent internet. That's amazing.
that is amazing.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's 2 after. I'm just going to make a quick announcement and then we'll give a couple more minutes for people to join. We can't delay too long because our hour is going to get just melted away pretty soon. I have a feeling this is going to be a fun and lively one. When the speakers are speaking, I will put it on speaker view so that you'll be able to see them and not all of our lovely faces. I am Sam Martinez. I'm the Executive Director of the APMM. And if you haven't already noticed, you are being recorded. And if you prefer not to have your face beamed out into all eternity, then please turn off your video. But don't turn off your video because we really do want to see you. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. We have closed the chat to communicate with me only. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask of our presenters, then we will interject those at the right time. However, once they have spoken their piece, then we'll open it up for a Q&A, and then you'll be able to ask those questions directly at that time. And we will, of course, use the raise hand feature, whether electronic or manual. Okay, so Michael, you think, Bruce, about maybe 5 after we can get started? Couple
Yeah.
more minutes. Okay.
Sounds great. We give them just a little bit more time for
Yeah.
stragglers to come in. And
Yeah.
then we were gonna we're gonna go ahead and let Fawn start off, share some stories, and if he has any images or anything he wants to share, we'll give him about 15 minutes. Then we'll give Jeff about the same. And then we'll probably close out after that with Q&A from the audience and whatnot. So.
Oh, I'm a presenter.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to stick you in the hot seat or anything.
Sorry, I've been pretty busy, so I was like, okay.
Well, hey, we can keep it as easy going as you want. If it turns into just
Yeah,
chat.
I mean, I think I
that's
told you all
great
my
too.
stories, but I'll tell
Well,
them again.
this is as the spirit of the meetups indicate, there it's just a casual get together, literally across the table, having a cup of coffee or a bowl of soup or a cocktail as the time frame suits you.
Yeah.
So we'd like to keep it very casual, so there's not a formal program, but we are very appreciative to Jeff and Fawn for being here.
Oh,
I
definitely.
do have to say, I borrowed my neighbor's 3D printer and it's been running 24 hours a day for the last 3 weeks. So much fun. I always wanted to have a shop, you know, when I retired. And it's like the fact that I can just sit there and CAD something up, print it, and have it on my model that evening, it's crazy.
You working on some RC car parts or?
Yeah, I'm building, I think I showed you guys, I'm building this fifth scale gas car. So I'm making like, this is a magnetic little camera that goes on there. The camera is all little details on it. The driver, I did the driver and the head, the helmets and ground effects and all kinds of stuff. It's been a blast.
Very cool.
I feel like I'm a model maker again.
Look, either one of you, Jeff or Fawn, don't want to have a prepared thing to say. We have questions to prime the pump, so you don't have to come up with stuff if you didn't or don't feel like it.
I have actually, well, it's up to you guys. I have a bunch of pictures that I could blow through from a talk that I did on miniatures in Star Wars. It wasn't specifically for this call, but I think a lot of it could be fun to look at.
Yeah, it sounds great.
So I'm wondering if we've met. Have we ever met before?
Oh, you look familiar. I don't know. I do a lot of conventions. I do some of the model meetups and stuff like that because I have an educational DVD on model making that I go around and sell and promote.
All right. Yeah, so the way I got started in all this was I was working in San Jose, and when I came here in 1980 from New York, I was working with the San Jose State guys and Rob Gamel, and he was hired by Lucasfilms, and then Pete Ronzani. And so what we did is I made all the models for those guys at the place called the Model Studio right there on North First Street, right off of 101 in San Jose. And those were the models that we did for Star Wars. Then I ended up working with Jim Fong at Galoob, and I did all the Star Wars toys.
Right. I worked at Galoob for a time when they
Remember
were
Jim Fong?
Yeah, Jim Fong is a good friend of mine.
Yeah, same here.
It's funny. I credit him for the revival of the entire Star Wars franchise.
Oh my God.
There's a story there.
Yeah, he has been making stuff for him constantly. Like, Jeff, you got a bar for because he gets all those resin models. I mean, it's funny because your background kind of looks like his house.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's my office.
Yeah. Thank you guys. We're so happy you guys are here. I'm going to say my little intro again. I'm Sam Martinez. I'm the director of the APMM, and I am happy to introduce our moderators and co-hosts today, Michael Scribner and Bruce Willey. They will be introducing our two main presenters, but this is, as we have talked before, a very casual meetup, and it's literally just like getting to meet a bunch of model makers. So don't hold back. At the start of this session, we actually are recording right now for your information. If you do not want to be on camera, please turn your video off. Otherwise, we would love to capture all of this for posterity. The presentation is going to be very loose, and so we will accept questions in the chat, and you'll be just sending them directly to me, and I will interject them. And later, after the two presenters have talked, then we will open it up for you to raise your hand. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to Michael and Bruce.
Is your guys' video frozen?
Mine is not.
Good so far.
Yeah, everybody's frozen in space here, so it can't. That's weird. Let me rejoin.
No problem.
So Fawn,
Well,
you
as
mentioned-
most of you will already know, our guests of honor here are Jeff Hafer and Fawn Davis, both of whom have pretty storied careers, frankly. Fawn, I gotta say, yours is amazing. When I was looking at your IMDb profile, I was just like stunned by all the things you've had your hand in over the years. In any case, we're very honored to have you both here. And yeah, so I mean, we're gonna kind of orient the first 30 minutes to letting you two kind of talk and recount your experiences. And then from there, we'll kind of go into the Q&A and whatnot. But, you know, like Sam said, this is fairly easygoing thing. So, you know, it's not going to be too strict or formal. The chat will only be visible to Sam. So your questions are only going to be seen by her. We'll channel them through her. I think in the later part of the session, we might open it up to allow people to speak directly though. So anyway, Fawn, if you wanted to go ahead, we'll let you guys, if you want to finish the thought, you guys were kind of, you know, jamming there a little bit. If you wanted to finish your thoughts on that real quick, and then Fawn, you can go on with your stories and whatnot.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, actually, Jeff and I were just trying to figure out where we had met before. Probably multiple times, Jeff. Sounds like we both worked at Galoob Toys in the model shop there, and we both knew Jim Fong. Also, Industrial Light and Magic is in the San Francisco Bay Area. I grew up there and lived there for about 25 years. And I was at ILM from 1996 to 2006. So
Wow, okay.
I can
Yeah,
imagine
yeah.
we have a lot of friends in common. And
Yeah.
we have met.
You know, it's interesting. I can never, and maybe you know the answer to this. I worked on a model of Ayrton Senna's marble car. Remember the TV commercial Industrial Light Magic did of the Acura morphing into the race car pulls up and it morphs into the Acura?
I do remember that, yes.
I cannot find that anywhere online.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of the stuff that came out of the commercials division for ILM that's really difficult to find. Or when I do find it, it's really, really low resolution. I remember we did these First Union Bank commercials where we built a lot of miniatures, and it was almost as many miniatures as some feature films that we had worked on. It was $1 million per commercial, and they're these incredible pieces. And I could only find a couple of the commercials, and they look terrible. Like the resolution is terrible. It's too bad that stuff isn't archived a little better.
Yeah, that was before, right before, you know, basically the computerized graphics.
Yes.
Yeah, it was an interesting model. It was big. It was almost the scale as that one that I was showing you guys. My video went on again, but I'm just gonna go with it and see what happens. I won't be able to see anything that you guys are showing or
So
your
as long as you
faces.
can hear us, we can hear you just fine. We
Yeah,
can
I
see
can hear you. I can hear you.
I launched.
Okay, so Fawn, you mentioned you had some slides to show.
I do, and I'm pulling them up, and my computer says they're being recovered.
Uh-oh.
Don't know why that's a thing. Okay, so sorry.
I can show some slides
here we go.
early.
Well, while you're working on that, Jeff, I had a question for you. I know it's come up before that you fabricated the original Darth Vader helmet and mask. What other involvement did you have as far as models and things with Star Wars back then?
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know how that was used, whether it was a prototype or the one that was in the movie. But like I said, it was Rob Gamel and the guys at San Jose State that were doing basically armature. Originally, it was all basically the stuff that they were using, on the bodies. And then what we ended up doing was we did a lot of the ships that were not in the main, the main characters in the movie. So it was all the stuff that was like on the sidelines. And so I think I remember telling you guys a story. Is there was a hobby store here called San Antonio Hobbies that we used to go to all the time, what I did is we made the basic ships out of styrofoam. And then we would take the stuff from model ships and we would just glue it onto the wings and spray it with primer and then use pencil to kind of weather it. And sometimes you'll see the three little, guns that come off the ships. I mean, we just basically scab stuff, and it was kind of the things that were dark. So it was just, you just made it up. All we had was sketches back then of what it wanted to be. So really not a lot of art direction or anything like that. And we would ship them off to be used. The other thing, I never can remember the character of in the snow when he cuts open what is that? Yeah. So I was at ILM for the shooting of that, and we did it with glass beads for the snow, and it was basically we'd get up and move the thing about a 1/16 of an inch, and then we'd go back underneath the table, and we'd come back up and move it a 1/16 of an inch. And I think we shot it was a 3-day shoot, and it was for like 5 seconds, and it was really blurry in the movie and stuff. I mean, you could tell that they like had to fake it. And then the other thing was the other thing that I was at was when we blew up the Death Star at the Circle Star Theater, which was the theater that was right off of 101 here in the Bay Area. And I thought it was really unique how they did it, because they put the camera, they basically put it up on top of this theater and had the camera right below it. So when the pyrotechnics went off, they would fly by the camera. Yeah, so that's really my, in terms of the movie stuff, I mean, it was basically things that were not in direct camera view.
That's all really interesting though, too, because at this point in time, so many people have fixated on every pixel of those movies to recreate. I mean, we've got prop makers and enthusiasts that are trying to recreate, everything, so, I'm sure even some of the stuff that you worked on, probably people are out there passionately attempting to recreate faithfully based on whatever, reference material they can come up with. So any bit is going to be interesting.
A lot of triangles. It's just everything was triangle.
So Fawn, were you able to recover your?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll try to. This was designed for a much longer talk, so I'm going to blow through it. It's going to sound a little rushed, but
no problem.
I think it's got a lot of great pictures and stuff. Oops. Just get to share screen, and here we go. Everyone see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this basically, I've been in the industry for 35 years. I've worked on over 40 feature films, of course, a lot of those being the Star Wars movies. I worked on the Star Wars special editions as well as the prequels, and then most recently, The Mandalorian. The thing that actually got me inspired to get into this industry was Star Wars, because I was about 7 years old when the movie came out, and I remember seeing this shot here. And then I picked up the Making of Star Wars book that they had at the library, and I was really blown away to find out that this shot that we all, this is like the first thing you see in Star Wars. That ship was only 3 feet long, and I was really fascinated with that. But also, I was just really blown away that that was a real job. I used to build things all the time. I used to build lots of model kits when I was a kid, and to find out that model making is an actual job path or a career that I could pursue was a really big moment for me. And that's kind of what just set my whole future right there. When we were working on Attack of the Clones, this is the Padme's apartment, which I was the supervisor on. We built this in it was about 1/24th scale. And it was the first miniature to be shot in all digital. And I remember when we were working on the special editions or any other movie actually before Attack of the Clones, including Phantom Menace, we shot with film, and you could hide a lot in film grain. So you would build a model to a certain level, and then you'd walk away from it, and the grain would hide the fact that it's not a perfect model. So we used to, so if you saw it in person, it might not look as impressive as it did on camera. When we did digital, we were, there was a lot of being boasted about high definition video. And so we were terrified that we weren't going to be able to get away with the same tricks that we always got away with in terms of, leaving little areas unfinished or not finished to the level that you would imagine it to be. And when we got this out to stage and they started shooting it, once again, it looked better than it did in person. And so I had a conversation with some of the guys from Sony who supplied the digital camera. And the big surprise was that when digital cameras shoot something, they take every pixel and turn it into a color. And they approximate what's in between those pixels and turns it into a single pixel. So it doesn't pick up all the detail. And instead of hiding things in film grain, you hide things in pixelization. But with pixelization, it makes it look really, really sharp and clean and clear. So it's no longer film grain that's hiding it, but it's pixelization, and it was great. we got to breathe a real huge sigh of relief after we got this model out and started shooting it. But this one actually worked so well that scene in the lower right there, there was a live action set, and then there was the miniature. And we had built all the miniature furniture and stuff. It was only supposed to be distant shots, but the miniature looked good enough here that we went ahead and used the miniature for it. Now that you know it's a miniature, you'll probably see it. But in the movie, that living room that's behind Anakin there is actually part of the miniature, not the live action set. So we were quite proud of that. One of the things that was really great working on the prequels is this was part of the, everything before that was film, everything before that was analog. And then when we got to these movies, there was, this is after Jurassic Park, so CG became a really big component. So we did what was called hybrid movie making. So we got to learn about all kinds of technology and how to integrate that technology into model making, and that didn't just include computer graphics, but it included working with the laser cutter and CNC machines, and then much later after this movie, 3D printers. And all of that technology just made, the work that we did higher quality and actually bought us more time in the industry than we probably would have had we not integrated that technology. So it was a lot of fun. For this miniature, this was actually a 16 by 16 foot section of Grievous's hangar that we built. I think it was also 24 scale. We built one quadrant, and then they scanned it and cloned it and turned it into 4 quadrants. And that's what you see in the movie is actual scans. Some of it is photography from the on the miniature itself. But yeah, that door that you're looking at on the lower right is only about 4 inches tall. It's a real fun model. Oh, this slide got a little messed up. I'm always quoting Dennis Mirren because he was one of the visual effects supervisors I got to work with at ILM. He says anytime you should start with something real, you should, because it forces everything up to that level. That's one of the reasons to this day we're still using miniatures. We're still using all of these real physical objects, because it's really hard to do that in the computer. It's not impossible, but it's really hard and often more expensive than doing it in camera with a miniature or a real physical object. Even now we're doing virtual production. We're 3D scanning miniatures and bringing those into Unreal so we can use them in the movie, and they look more real than if we created a model 100% in Scratch in the computer. So it's alive and well, the miniatures as a career. This is just a funny tidbit. I'm sure you guys have all heard this story. It's a pretty popular story, but we had over 1 million spectators in the arena audience here. And we had to find some way to create them and for them to look real. And the solution was to put it in a piece of screen, and you can see in the lower left, and then drop Q-tips in as spectators. And so behind that, it was all open. And if you hit it with a fan, they'd move around a little bit. And that was the plan. Once we got this to set, this is actually shot outside. There was enough just air circulation that when we shot this, you could see the people moving around without putting fans on them at all. And then also in the lower left, speaking of Galoob, Jeff, those are Micro Machine action fleet figures and some Micro Machine figures. We had hit up Jim Fong while we were doing the scene and asked him for a bunch of Galoob Star Wars miniatures to put on the stairs and things for this scene. So it's a mix of Q-tips and Galoob toys.
We should have him on and have him show all the stuff that he's building.
Oh man, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to just reconnect with him. I haven't seen him in a while. If you see him, tell him to hit me up. I don't know if I even have contact anymore.
I'll text him right after this.
Yes, please. I want to do an article on him.
Yeah, it's ridiculous the stuff that he does.
Yeah.
And it's inspirational too. Yeah.
It is, and it's well, and you know, I'm not even kidding about Jim Fong being the reason Star Wars is what it is today. It kind of, there's this weird story that a lot of people don't know, but he came up with the idea of Star Wars Micro Machines. When he pitched that idea at Galoob, sadly someone else took credit for it, but he pitched the idea because he grew up with Star Wars and he loved Star Wars. He thought it was really great. But at that time, there was no Star Wars merchandise. Star Wars kind of went out in 1984. Everything went on sale. Everything was gone. And then while he was at Galoob, he was like, you know, I think people are ready to buy Star Wars stuff again. And he suggested Star Wars Micro Machines. And so they came out with them. And as you know, they were a huge hit. And then Kenner was looking at their action figures and they decided to re-release their action figures. And they were such a huge hit that people were fighting over them in the aisles at Toys R Us. Like when they were unboxing, there were fights breaking out. They had to call the police. It was really dramatic. And then George Lucas, suddenly people were asking for Star Wars licensing. And then George Lucas looked at that and he thought that maybe it's time for more Star Wars movies. He could finally make more movies. And people would be interested in it. So he released the Star Wars special editions as a test. You know, he wanted to go back and do a bunch of things to those movies, but most of all, he just wanted to test and see what the market was like without making, you know, the investment of a new movie. And they broke every previous record of any movie that ever came out again, a second time when they released the special editions. So then he decided to do the prequels. And then of course that led to everything we have now. So you can trace back the revival of Star Wars to Jim Fong. That's what I want to talk to him about. I don't know if he knows that.
No, it completely makes sense. I mean, I remember, I don't know, do you remember doing when we did the first round of toys on the Walker? They weren't weathered, remember? Mm-hmm. We didn't weather them, and so Lucas said, "Oh, we can't ship these; they have to be weathered." So I have a collection somewhere of all the unweathered models and then the weathered models.
Oh wow, that's rare.
Yeah, and I gave them to my kids. I don't know where they are now, but I packaged them all up in a box. But yeah, it was interesting working because I remember when I got the files for those. It was 2 years before the movie came out, and because it was all the speed runners and all that stuff. And I remember the NDA was like, you know, if you leaked any of this stuff, you were basically a dead man, you know. So
we talk about the snipers on the top of the building if you were out.
Yeah, but right about then, that's when I was using Alias and rendering. So basically what I did at night was I would just render all of them because I had the 3D CAD for them, and I would just sit there and render them and thinking like, what would they look like, you know, before the movie came out.
Yeah.
So
those would be Phantom Menace then. This is what you're talking about.
Yeah. But the Galoob thing, I actually interviewed at Galoob and I decided not to go there. But there was an Italian model maker, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name. It was so long ago now.
Yeah, I just didn't care for the CEO. That's why I ended up not going there.
Oh, yeah.
Fawn, there was a question from Amelia and says that Amelia is a model making student at Arts University Bournemouth. And they were watching a video on YouTube just today, which showed how many props from the original trilogy and The Mandalorian were repurposed everyday items like razors, electric razors, or jet engine parts.
Oh, yeah.
And so Amelia was wondering how much this technique represents what was going on for the making of the modern trilogy.
Oh, man. We do it all the time, not just in Star Wars, but just in any model making. And we call them greebles often, but we do kit bashing. So we'll often take objects that were not designed for that specific function. Like say you buy a battleship kit and you take all the guns and turrets and this, that, and the other, and you flip them around and make them kind of unrecognizable, but put them in some kind of interesting mechanical looking pattern. that's basically all over pretty much every Star Wars model you can imagine. The kit bashing. Sometimes you'll take household objects and you'll build on top of those because you want to start with a shape. And of course, if you do it from scratch, you're going to spend a lot of time creating that shape. So whenever possible, actually, we have a saying that's off the shelf is always cheaper. And then what you do is you go cheap on everything you can. And what that usually does is it leaves you a lot of time and money to spend where it really counts. And those little pockets in the Millennium Falcon is not where it counts. It's in the shape of the overall spacecraft. So those are so it's a very common technique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even with CG, like when I worked on Toy Story, I mean, a lot of that's all even the CG models are repurposed for other things as well.
Yeah, we have CG and practical greebles because now we use 3D printers quite a bit. They're not the shiny red button that they're often sold to be. You still have to create the computer model. So you really weigh out whether or not you want to do something physical or digital. But there are definitely those times where it's much faster to do something digitally and just print it. And the printers are getting pretty impressive in terms of quality these days. But we also have machines that print large items in low quality fast. So you're even weighing out the pros and cons of the different 3D printers when you do use them. This slide here, it's just kind of demonstrating why we still use miniatures, why we still used miniatures at ILM, which was the most cutting edge computer graphics company in the world at the time. And that's because of, things like water, light, texture, any kind of explosion and things. Those always look more real if you do it because there's a lot of randomness involved. And same with doing something like the Utapau sinkhole wall. You carve that in foam and you use lots of different spritzer bottles and you can get these really intricate paint patterns very quickly, which is much more complicated in the computer. That's just, misconception. So if you're a professional model maker, you fight what's called the Toys R Us effect. Now that Toys R Us is not around anymore, I don't know if this is the right thing to call it, maybe the Walmart effect, but it's basically the idea, and if any of you have ever tried to sell a miniature, you probably know this. People don't understand how much work goes into doing scratch model making or maquettes and things like that. So, you might quote $10,000 to do a maquette for a movie, and then they'll say something like, well, I can go to Toys R Us and get one for $30. I can go to Toys R Us and get an Iron Man figure for $30. Why is this so expensive? It's like, well, you can go do that because of mass production, because it's mass produced. I guarantee the prototype was probably $10,000, but you can use Iron Man for your movie. I won't stop you. And they usually have to, get the work done. So, but I call that the Toys R Us effect because people are used to going to the store and buying things that are produced in the thousands. So as a model maker, it's a real challenge to convince people that 12-inch long spaceship is going to be thousands of dollars. Choosing scale is a lot of people ask how we choose scale. It really has to do with just how far away from the camera it is and does it interact with actors. These are some fun examples. The most commonly used Millennium Falcon is about 6 feet long. But when it's on a Star Destroyer, you might have to make a smaller one. When it's on a live action set, you want it full size, but maybe you don't make the whole thing. So those are just good examples. Amortizing scale. So amortizing cost is a thing that we do often. When you look at miniatures for movies, this probably doesn't apply to you guys so much, but it's a big conversation. You know, if you're building a miniature, you look at how many shots in the movie is it going to be in. If it's only going to be in one shot, but it's the climax of the movie, you might spend a lot of money on it. If it's only going to be in one shot and it's the middle of the movie, it's just kind of bridging two scenes, you might make that smaller scale. But if it's going to be a whole sequence in the movie, like the lava field in Revenge of the Sith, then you might build something massive like this. This was a big methyl cellulose fake lava miniature. We call these bigatures at a certain point, because when you walk into a set like this, it's really hard to call it a miniature. I don't know if, and there's some debate as to whether that term was coined when we were on the Matrix movies or if it was on the Lord of the Rings movies. But bigatures is the phrase we use once they get to a certain size. And you can see like that person up at the top. That's a massive, massive miniature.
What was the lava? How did you do the lava? Is it lights?
Yeah, it was lit from underneath, so it was all on top of acrylic. It had to be really thick acrylic because the lights were hot. This is long before LED stage lighting. We're still kind of making that transition now. You know, you want that bright light, you got to use really hot lights. And then we use methyl cellulose, which is a food thickener mixed with water to make a really thick kind of goop. And that was the same stuff they used for slime in Ghostbusters. And then we used cork, spray painted black for the soot that kind of sits on the top of the methyl cellulose because cork floats. So it worked really great. I've done it on several different shows. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing every time.
How do you spray it when it's in pieces? Or do you spray it and then break out the pieces?
You break it up and then you spray it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like a big screen or something. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you make 5-gallon buckets of it. You put out a tarp outside and just go for it. They made, and that on that scene, they would take 55-gallon drums and fill those up.
Yeah. You can't do that in California anymore.
The spray painting outside?
Yeah.
Well, not for a shop. It depends. There's regulations as to how much you can do before you require a spray booth with filters and all that. But they're also reformulating the paints constantly.
Right. Yeah, they're water-based paint.
Spray paint is probably because they just reformulated it and they haven't figured it out yet, which is really annoying because it means every time we pick up a can of spray paint, we have to test it on something before we go use it. That's just become like standard practice. So this is actually the first pyro shot that I ever got to work on. It was, and this is one of those examples. It was just one scene at the beginning of the movie. It wasn't like a whole sequence for the movie. So we had to use a smaller model than we would have normally used. If we had designed this shot and had the budget that we would of course want for it, the front of that ship would probably be 18 inches in diameter. It'd be pretty big. But instead, this is only about 8 inches in diameter. So about half the size that we normally use. But it's in the movie. It looks great.
Fawn, I hate to stop you because I'm just soaking this up and this is amazing. But just for the sake of time, I'm thinking we might want to let Jeff kind of kick in and share some of his experiences and stuff at this point, just because we are so pressed for time.
Now this is definitely more interesting. I think that now let him go, because I mean the stuff that I did was literally just, I was just an extra hand, and the funny thing was at the time, and maybe you can talk about this as well. You didn't realize the enormity of what you were doing. When we were doing those, when I became a model maker and I'd work on stuff, I had no idea the impact it was going to have on culture. It's just a job, and that's one of the things I think that as a model maker, you have to stop and think about the levity of what you could be working on and the impact it's going to have on humanity. I mean, these, who knew that these movies were going to be what they were, back then. So, we had no clue. It was just a job, and it was the fun thing about it as a model maker. It was really free. You could do anything you wanted because there wasn't any, it was just they needed help. So it was just kind of like just do whatever you could, and having no direction is actually very liberating as a model maker. So those are the things I remember from doing these models. And then as I got into doing more movie stuff, it was like one of a kind things. Like for IDEO, we did we did some submarines and things like that. So it was always kind of like I was always in the business, but not in the business. I never did it full time for a reason. And John can probably talk about that as well. But that's just, it's just fond memories of this stuff. And so it was more bits and pieces. This stuff is super. You're getting a behind the scenes look at what's going on. So I think this is just definitely more important.
I could speed through this really quick too, though. This is we use some environments. We built miniature environments for actors to be green screened into. That was for a lot of the sets. The arena was one of those. The pod race hangars, a lot of the pod race scenes, those were all miniatures. And then for the CG pod race, we would digitize the physical models into digital models, and that was so that those would look more realistic. Coruscant, those were all miniatures. So a lot of the fly-throughs, Dexter's Diner, all that kind of stuff. Tatooine and Naboo were also miniatures. There was a lot more miniatures in the movie than most people knew about because they were focused very much on the innovations in technology that ILM was doing at the time. This is a pyro shot. We blew up a lot of stuff. We shot at high speed. For those of you who don't know, that means you run the camera really fast and you play it back at regular speed, and it makes it look bigger, much bigger. You can actually do this on your phone now. A lot of crashing because we can crash miniatures and you get all that randomness. Spoke about that before. Dry for wet was a really cool technique we used for underwater. So we built these giant underwater sets, miniatures, bigatures, and then you'd fog up the stage. You'd light it from the top with some blue lighting. And once the fog kind of settled into a haze, it looked like you were underwater. And elements just means we blew up things. Just random. It could be dirt. It could be just greebles. One of the most fun things that we used to do, it was really interesting or funny, kind of fun notes. We used to need lots of debris when we blew up miniatures. So we would take pasta and we break up pasta and spray paint it black and gray and white and maybe red oxide or something, just to get some variety of neutral colors. And then we would pack the model with pasta. And the reason we would do that is because when you shoot an explosion, things can fly by the camera so fast that it'll be gone. It'll pass the camera between frames. So you ended up needing way more debris than you ever thought you would need. So we would use pasta for that.
I mean, this was a big deal because everything in the first one, the sprites are always, those are the things that didn't look real, right?
Yeah.
That if you go back to the first one, it was just like they hated those sprites, and that's when they did the redo. That was like I remember that was one of the things that they kind of were harping on, that it needed to be done better. So this was a big deal, what you're talking about. Did I lose you guys?
No, still there.
Okay.
Yeah, Fawn, can you go for a few more minutes and then maybe we can transition into the Q&A?
Sure. Well, actually, hey, Jeff, why don't you talk about, I mean, I've used a lot of time. I would love to actually hear how you approached model making at Galoob, like how you made parts and how you utilized molding, casting, vacuum forming, like what techniques did you use?
Yeah, well, so that was right. So I had a model shop called Satellite Models, and basically I was, like I said, I did a lot of different things for people, and it was I worked for NASA. I did stuff for, Cume Computers, HP. It was just Apple, Atari. I worked at Atari. So, I mean, I had a pretty open book about model making, and so, when I came to California, I was fortunate to have a really good model maker in Carl Lipiani, who ran the model studio. And I don't know how many model shops were here in 1980. I don't think there were as many as there were like in the 90s, so we just got a lot of different work. And so approaching, I don't know how I met Jim Fong, but I ended up, basically I did castings, and I did a lot of stuff by hand, clay and, RTV molds. And, it's basically, I approach model making, like I would never do things the same way twice. Unless, so that, it's like when you're teaching stuff, there's certain things that you learn. And I always try to do something different. Like, like the whole, like you talking about the pasta, right? I mean, people always ask me, how do you come up with this stuff? And it's literally, I lie in bed or I dream about it at my work. And that's how I approach model making. I mean, everything is accessible. And like you're saying, home products for use for models. I mean, only a model maker would think of that crap, right? I mean, it's just the way our brains are kind of wired to look at, I just building my car, I'm using stuff that I find in my house. I didn't have to go to the store for anything when I was building my stuff, because it was just like, everything is here. It's just, you gotta look for it. So when I approach model making, it's really just kind of a fun, open-minded approach to, getting the best results and quickly. For me, it's time to quality. That's the key ratio of being a good model maker, or anything that you do. Now that I do CG stuff and computers, it's the same thing. How fast can you get to that quality? So with Jim, I had the CAD, so I was just using my Herco. I had just bought a 3D, 3-axis milling machine. So that saved my day. When I got that CAD data, it was easy for me just to machine things. But before that, it was vacuum forming, like you say, vacuum forming. And like when we were doing all the armature, that was literally just vacuum forming and basswood. We would just make bucks because we had to make tons of them. I don't know I was thinking about that today. We would only make like 1 or 2 prototypes, but somebody had to take those and rebuild them at ILM, right? For everybody. So I wasn't sure, like I wasn't involved in the process that much in terms of what happened when we threw the stuff over the fence. But it was just, my approach would, like I say, I'd look at everything differently. Like if you gave me a project 2 years from now, I would do it totally differently than I would do it today, right? Because part of it is the technology and just what you learn, the little tricks that you learn. Like, when I used to do acrylic, I would fix it using super glue and baking soda. And most people know about that now, but back in the day, it was just one of those things where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna just add some baking soda to this or salt or something just to figure out if I could get a clear thing. So it's you learn these things and you retain them, and you just apply them to the next thing that you do. I don't know if that really answered your question, but
Sure.
the glue stuff was more using my Herco and machining it because I had the CAD data from the interesting thing was it was polygonal data, and I had to kind of resurface a lot of it to make it into NURBS. You guys know what NURBS are, right?
Imagine most everyone here probably does, but there may be some who don't. If you wanted to sum it up real quick.
Yeah. Well, NURBS is a non-rational uniform B-spline surface, and I think I talked about this in my talk before. It's just how surfaces are defined. And so, and they're smooth. So when you machine them, you're not getting those little steps that you would get with a, triangulated or quad model, unless it's a really high resolution quad model.
There was a question asked by Paul earlier. This is kind of jumping into the middle of something, but Paul wanted to know what materials those ships that you blew up at that time were made out of.
We had a number of different tricks. When we do pyro miniatures, often we'll build certain parts, really, really structural parts that we don't want to explode. And then we'll choose areas that we actually want to either explode towards camera or break up into a certain number of pieces. We would usually cast those in urethane. And then sometimes we would cast them in urethane, but inlay aluminum foil inside, not household aluminum foil. We would get thicker stuff from McMaster Carr. And then, you might have a laser cut structure inside of acrylic that breaks really easy instead of, and then in the parts that you don't want to blow up, those would be metal, perhaps, or wood. And so, but most of it was cast urethane, I would say, or laser cut.
So you'd laser cut like a plane into a bunch of pieces so it would break exactly the way you wanted it to.
Yeah, if you could imagine, like if you were blowing up, we did a helicopter for Mission Impossible 3, and we actually built a helicopter chassis in acrylic. And then for that one, we actually made the fuselage of the helicopter. We molded it and we cast it in wax. Then we sent it out to get coated and plated in metal. And then we got that back, melted out the wax, and then put in the acrylic structure. So that when it broke and it tore and bent and it did all that stuff that helicopters do, it looked very realistic, very scale. So the metal on it was probably thinner than what you would see on a soda can.
So with a process like that, how do you guys come up with that? And is it just you guys all sitting down and saying, hey, how can we do this? I mean, obviously you have you've learned through the years of the things that I was talking about, where you just kind of, you remember how you did it somewhere else and then you apply it to that. But who is the driving force behind that?
We had a hierarchy. So the head of the model shop would do all the hiring for the different departments. And we had several different departments in the model shop. We had a machine shop, carpentry shop, plastic fabrication, laser cutting, machining, mold. There's a paint department. And then creature shop. And so but they would have leads on, basically you have a supervisor for each show. If a show's big enough, you had a supervisor for each sequence, and they would choose all the leads. The leads would lead individual builds. So, as an example, in Attack of the Clones, Brian Grenand was the supervisor of all the miniatures, and then he would hire us. I was a lead on that. So I was in charge of Padme's apartment. I was in charge of the hallways for the hatchery and just certain builds. And then I had a team of people. And then as far as how we did things, obviously the leads and the supervisors would discuss kind of broad strokes, how to do these things. But we also utilized the brain trust all the time. That's what we used to call it, because there was about 100 model makers at our peak at ILM.
Wow.
And basically, it's about trusting that inner voice. So you would hear that inner voice in your head says, there's got to be a better way to do this. As soon as you have that thought, you ask the brain trust. So if it was a machining quandary or a mold quandary, you would go ask the people who work in those departments. Some of us, I was a generalist, which is one of the reasons I ended up supervising, is because I worked in multiple departments. But you would just ask, because I worked in multiple departments, I probably didn't have all the really, really deep tricks in each department, because those usually come from someone who specializes in that area. So it was just a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion. Often when we got off the phone with a client or director, and they had listed everything they want to do, we'd say, yeah, no problem. And they hang
And then
up.
you say, how do you do it?
And then we'd look at each other and go, okay, how are we going to do it? You know?
Yeah,
And
that's
then
very
figure it
common.
out.
Very common.
But you're right. There's a lot of tricks. Like there's certain things that I wouldn't even say they're tricks. There's tools, materials, techniques, and you become familiar with all of those things. And there's definitely the majority of the stuff we do, you're working inside the box. But then I would say every single project requires some things that you've never done before.
Right.
You know, and so that's where you focus your energy, of course.
But and that's the beauty of model making, right? I mean, that's the beauty of these things, because you are pushed. I mean, I'm more in the product side. I've been in the product side for 40 years. And so I always tell people that the beautiful thing, like when I worked at Apple, you know, it was ID would push engineering, and engineering would say, we can't do that. And ID would say, yeah, we have to do it. And it would just like, that's how progress is made, right? You know, there's got to be those opposing, someone's got to be setting the bar.
Yeah.
Right. In anything you do. And for a model maker, it's usually yourself, right? I mean, most of us had small shops, so it's like, it's basically all on you. And just think of the days before internet, right? You know, like it's different. Before the internet world, you basically, you had to go visit a shop or you know, you had to have that brain trust of people. Now you can just look it up, and I'm going to say Google it because I work at Google, but I mean, now you can just Google the stuff, and you know, all that information is available to us.
Yeah.
So the brain trust has kind of moved away from the people inside the shop to basically the whole world, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of like,
it's a big game changer.
Yeah,
it's true. It's like, I think my favorite part about doing this stuff for a living is variety. Like you never get bored. I don't know what I'm going to do from one week to the next, which can be nerve-wracking if you want to make plans, but it keeps everything very interesting. Our slogan here is that's impossible. When do you want it?
Yeah. What, in terms of hours, I mean, I have a few questions. I mean, in just terms of like the hours you work. I mean, one of the reasons I didn't get into doing video games and movies was because you would just work these crazy hours for 2 to 3 years, and then they'd let you either go, or, you know, I just would hear these horror stories, right? So what are your, you know, you've obviously ingrained into your profession. How many hours, like, what were you working 10 years ago as opposed to today?
It actually depends more on the company than the time period and the project. You know, so we just finished a project where we were doing 12-hour days, 6 days a week. We are currently on 40-hour weeks for most of the crew. I run the company, so I'm here 60 hours a week minimum forever. But it's true. I mean, every single job is different, but also every company is different, and every project structure is different. And you do have to learn to bob and weave, and you have to just trust that you'll get more jobs. And some of them will be harder than others. Some of them will be more rewarding than others. And you just kind of, the thing that you always have though is knowing that that project will end and you'll go to the next one, you know? So,
right.
And even the toughest projects I've ever worked on, when you see the final product, when you see the movie come out, you very quickly forget how painful the process was, and how, you know, how the end result made it all worth it, you know?
Yeah. I had a lacrosse coach that always said pain was temporary.
Yeah, it's so true.
It's temporary. Ask anybody who's given birth, right?
Yes.
So we are getting awfully close to the end of our hour. This back and forth's been so good. I frankly didn't want to cut in and stop you guys, but I would really love it if you could give us just a few minutes so that if anybody in the audience does have some questions, maybe we could do a few.
Absolutely.
Your time is obviously extremely valuable, so you let us know how much you got, but if we could get maybe another 5 minutes or so, just to answer.
I think we started late anyway, so I wouldn't mind running a little long.
There was a
It's up to
question.
you guys.
There was a question from Ezra. Ezra, do you want to ask that question yourself?
Sure, I could do that. I've heard quite a bit about newer Star Wars projects and various other sci-fi film things starting to use giant high-def LED screens as a new form of backdrop, where they're filming what they want as a backdrop and sticking it behind the actors and just shooting in line with that, rather than building a set. And I'm just curious, are you still building physical models and sets that are then scanned and or filmed and then projected onto those screens, or is that becoming more digitally constructed?
It's actually, it's funny, every time everyone spells the extinction of the model shop, we prove them wrong. Virtual production is what I was referring to that a little bit earlier. We do have an LED wall here at Funko Studios. And of course, we've used them on a number of different shows and movies and stuff lately. We end up doing a lot of miniatures because you could build a miniature spacecraft, you could paint it, you can get all that really great detail that you could get out of a physical object, and then you scan it or do photogrammetry, you get it into the computer and it looks real because it was a physically real object, and you don't have to fight it so hard. So we're doing actually quite a lot of miniatures, just digitizing them. So what you see in the movie is a digitized version of the miniature. But we did that on the pod race on Star Wars Phantom Menace. Those pod racers look spectacular. So it's miniatures have become a shortcut for high quality rendered computer models in virtual production. And we are building a lot of things that go in front of the LED wall. So, we're still shooting, miniatures and sets and things in front of the LED wall instead of a green screen. So basically the LED wall replaces the green screen. And then what you display on the LED wall is in an Unreal environment. So all of that has to be created. What's kind of liberating about it is you could work in any scale and combine all your scales, because once you digitize it, you can shrink it or grow it. So it's pretty fun technology.
So fun. Does anybody do matte paintings anymore?
Well, we have what's called digital matte. So there's a lot of the people who did matte paintings before on glass, for example, are now working in the computer. But yeah, there's still a lot of matte paintings done for set extensions, and even in Unreal. It's funny, Unreal has just become an extension of how we do things in reality, right? So we do physical models, we build the sets, and then we scan them in, and they're there in the computer environment, and it gives you more freedom. But in the background, if you have a mountainside, you're not going to model that in 3D. There's no point, because you just need it there for parallax. It's distant. It's always going to remain, flat in perspective, because you're too far away from it to get parallax within that asset. So those are still matte paintings. Skies are still matte paintings. So there's still a lot of people who do it. It's just utilizing Photoshop instead of actual paints.
Right.
That's another one of those fields that'll just go on forever. It's now it's all virtual.
Right.
Matthew has a question. Matthew Winch, do you want to unmute and ask a question?
Yeah, so first off, thank you for coming. It was awesome hearing your stories. So I'm an incoming college freshman, just got accepted to my college, and I'm interested in a career in like props, animatronics, special effects. I know you must have been asked this several times, and I'm also curious, what are some tips you have for people like me who want to get into the industry?
Well, the big ones, obviously get as much school as you can stand. But also know that you'll learn a lot on the job. In fact, you'll learn most of what you know on the job. It's just, if you have the school, it gives you a really good foundation for everything you're going to learn. I was actually one of those people that was not fortunate enough to go to school, but it didn't stop me either. So there are many paths to getting to this job. A lot of the model makers at ILM were industrial designers. That seem to apply to model making more than any other area of study. But I think that the most important thing to know or to consider when trying to get into this field is just know that it's going to take a little time. It is hard work. Definitely be nice to everybody, even if they're a jerk. You never burn bridges. It's so true. It's like we have clients today that were production assistants at Funko like years ago. And you just never know where people are going to end up. And you know, that life is too short for drama anyway. So just try to avoid it at all costs, I say. But yeah, so that component is important and cannot be underestimated. Work ethic. Don't go in expecting that you're going to be able to work on whatever you want to work on and you're going to get the best projects out the door. I was at ILM, we were doing commercials. I was in commercials for a long time. Everyone around me is working on all these big feature films and I'm building things for commercials, which was not what I had gone there to do, but I knew that that was the path that I had to take, just like everyone else. You know, you have to pay your dues. Be ready for the long hours, you know, be ready for real work. I feel like schools do a disservice to students by not preparing them for the fact that work is hard, you know, and we do get a lot of the students fresh out of school and they're like, this is work, not fun. You know, it's like, yes, that's why you get paid to do it, you know? So if you want to have fun, you won't get paid to do it. And not saying you can't have fun and work. We have a blast, you know, but it's got to be combined with the hard work. So I say work ethic, being a good person are actually the tools that will be the most important. The rest is just tools, materials, techniques, you know, learn as much as you can. I found that being a generalist, you know, learning as many different techniques and areas of fabrication that I could was better than being a specialist, like people who just paint or just make molds and so on. You get more work if you can do more work, you know. And we hire people, we want to keep the same people on consistently throughout the year. We don't want to lay people off. That's never a goal. But if we hired people who can only do one thing, we would hire the first department, they'd get laid off, hire the second department, they'd get laid off, and so on. So, you know, being a generalist really, really helps because it means we can keep the same person employed throughout the entire process from design all the way through shooting on stage. You know,
where are you going to school?
I just got accepted to WPI, which is in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what types of programs do they have for modeling? Is it a design program or is it something else?
It's an engineering school. I'm planning on majoring in robotics engineering. I already have like I'm doing some like animatronic projects. I just started a project where I'm recreating John Knowles' camera rig and I'm making a miniature Razor Crest. And then I'm also making Mandalorian armor from scratch using the aluminum luster from the show. And the animatronic I'm making is BB-8, so it's fully functional.
Nice.
And I'm actually going to finish it this week. It's going to be fully functional, which is exciting.
Friend me on Facebook. Send me pictures. I want to see.
For sure. Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
Yeah. Cool.
We have a question from Will Smith on deck. He's got his hand up. And I'm going to mention real quickly, though, in case Will doesn't, that we have a student model maker competition coming up. And maybe he's going to mention that too. And you should keep an eye on our Instagram and our Facebook page and everything. And we'll announce when we have eligibility. So now, Will.
Oh, well, you're muted.
Unmute myself.
You're muted.
There we go. Yeah, definitely keep a lookout for the competition. I don't want to hog too much time here, though. I wanted to ask Fawn, how many do you get many students or youngsters, teenagers, whatever, contact you saying, how do I get into this industry? I'm interested. Do people really understand that there is this career in special effects and miniature building and so on anymore, or is it just assumed, oh, it's all digital now, I couldn't do that for a job, I'll do something else? I wonder whether you see, I should kind of come clean as I'm an educator. I lecture on a model making program, so I'm looking at this from the other side of the coin.
Right.
But I'm interested to hear your kind of side of that. Do people know there's a career in model making these days still? Yeah,
I actually started doing education and talks and things like that, and things like this actually also to kind of dispel a lot of those myths, because for a long time after the prequels came out, people thought there were no miniatures in those movies, and they thought there were no miniatures anywhere, and that everything is being done in CG. And so, you know, even though I worked at ILM, I had always run Fonco, my model shop, outside of Fonco. And then through the years, and especially once I moved down to Los Angeles and reopened down here, starting from scratch, I realized that a lot of people, because they think model making doesn't happen anymore, they don't, there was a lack of people who studied it and a lack of people I could hire. So that's when I came out with my educational DVDs, and I started to do, and I still do, of course, after pandemic, I'll start to do them again, 10 to 12 conventions a year, just talking about the topic to inspire people. Yeah, so I mean, I'd say the myth is alive and well that there are no models being used in movies or TV anymore. But I do everything I can to just get out in the world and teach.
Yeah. So, Will, the thing that's changed is that, and this is what I see with people that I hire, is that they're all in the computer and they didn't do anything by hand, and it's a huge disservice to those kids if they're not building stuff by hand. That's it's kind of a trade that's being lost. That's why it's so hard to find these people. I mean, there are schools that you can actually pick like 1 or 2 schools in the world that you can actually know that if you hire somebody from that school that they have the basic training things. So it's like you said, it's kind of important to understand materials and how those interact with other things. But the hand building and painting and doing all that stuff, that's just something that kids don't tend to do. I grew up with my dad had a shop. I was just fortunate that my dad had a shop in the basement. I don't know how many people have shops in basements still, but it's kind of a passed on kind of thing. But it's definitely when I look at what's happening, it's just the fact that people aren't actually building things by hand, and they don't understand 3 dimensions. It's kind of either you kind of do or you kind of don't. So that's super important that they understand that there's 6 sides to something, or whatever. Like I always ask people how many sides on a door to paint. Most people don't get it right.
All right.
Well,
So I don't see any other. Will, did you have something else to say?
No, I just say it's fascinating to hear that kind of. I have that kind of conversation quite often, as you can hear. Recruiting student model makers. I'm part of a team that deliver a 3-year program in model making, and you're echoing the exact same kind of concerns and kind of you're lamenting the same kind of things. Is that it's twofold. People aren't making so many things anymore, and they're also assuming it's all CGI. So it's a two-sided sword kind of thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you have any really great students, send them my way, and then Matt, make sure to send me your application when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm actually writing.
We're actively hiring, frequently. So
I'm writing mine right now. Fawn, I'm writing mine right now. When I retire,
well, I can see some of my students and indeed some graduates I know from our course from years ago in the room. So I fear you may be buried under CVs. No, not CVs, resumes. Pretty soon, Fawn. So
fine by us.
No, yeah, it'd be great to hook up. I'd love to show you some of the work that our students are doing.
Sure. Be great.
All right. Well, if I might indulge, I have one question I'd like to ask both of you. Just because you have both done such amazing work over the years, I'm curious, just to remind us all that we're all human here. Is there one thing you can think of, like Fawn, in one of the movies that you've worked on, or Jeff, any of the products you've developed or films that you've worked on? Is there anything that made it to screen that you just wince every time you see it? It's a detail like nobody else would ever notice, but you see it and it bothers you every time. It's just, maybe it was something that you just didn't have time to iron out. Somebody changed something at the last minute and you didn't have time to quite do that thing just the way you wanted that thing done.
Jeff, do you want to go first?
Yeah, no, the thing is, when you're working at a professional level, there's so many eyes on things that that stuff just doesn't. I've never had anything like, it's always looked better than what I delivered. I've always been pleased about that stuff. So it's like I said, it's just there's so many people that it matters to that by the time it gets on screen or the product's made, it's gone through the wash many times. So I can't think of anything in particular that that like we left out of a scene. I mean, I think I told you the story about 1941 where the Ferris wheel went down we had a miniature city, and the Ferris wheel didn't have lights on it, right? And we ended up having to rebuild everything. I mean, that's the only thing I wince at is like having to redo, 3 months worth of work. But nothing on screen or nothing, no products that I can say, I've done some products I don't think are pleasing, but that's not my call. They're not coming from me.
I would say on our side, there's a lot of those things. We're on these movies and various projects, and they all have very tight deadlines. Things were really moving fast. Sometimes it's our department, sometimes it's other departments, but I think occasionally we do a miniature that is intended to be shot from far away, and they shoot really, really close on it. And that's always torture to see because, I of course can spot all those scenes in movies where it's like, that is clearly a miniature and they should have not used it for that shot. And then sometimes we'll build something and we'll shoot it and it'll be just perfection. And then they'll put it into a CG shot with a CG set extension, and they run out of time on that department. And then they have to muddy up and add motion blur to our photography to make it match the bad CG. I'd say that happens quite a bit. And that's always unfortunate. But yeah, there's I don't know if there's a single movie that I've worked on that I thought was perfection. Not going to name any names, of course.
Well, you know what it is. It's so funny. When I got into this profession, it made me really not enjoy movies because I knew how they did everything. That's, as a model maker, that's what I would look at. I wasn't really interested in the story. I'm interested in the eye candy, right?
Yeah.
So, it's like playing music. Like when I play guitar, so when I listen to music, I only hear like certain things. Other people hear different things. So it's just one of those things that's what you're looking for. So there are definitely those things that happen, especially in movies, because like Fawn's saying, I mean, if there's other departments, that's the thing. If there's other departments that are, you build something with a certain expectation and then they don't use it like that. Those are cringy moments because it's a reflection on you, right? It's your work, and you can't tell people, well, it was only meant to be shot for, I always say it's a 3-footer or 5-foot. What is this model? 3-footer? It's like that's what defines how close you should get to it, right?
Yeah.
So when I was building models, if I wasn't happy with something, I would just say, oh, that's a 3-footer. Don't go up and look at it.
It's funny. Yeah, that's actually how I gauge a good movie. If I can forget to look at the models and the sets and the costumes, and if I can not focus on what lens they're using or things like that, if I can forget about all that and just enjoy the story, then I know it's a good movie.
Yeah.
But it's not, sadly, not as common as I'd like it to be.
All right, so I don't know if we have time for maybe one more question, if someone has one. I don't see any hands up, but. All right, well, I mean, that's probably a good place to wrap it then.
Quick thing, Michael, I did open up the chat so that people can speak to each other directly. And so if there's somebody on this meetup that you'd like to stay in touch with, please direct message them. And also you can also get in touch with me at the APMM. My email address is info@modelmakers.org. And if you have any questions about the APMM, about these meetups or anything, just feel free to reach out. We're always happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Fawn and Jeff, thank you both so much for your time. You've been more than generous with your time and sharing your experiences with us. I'm sure we'll all treasure this. I don't know if anybody else has anything to say. Bruce, did you have anything?
I'm in complete agreement with you. And once again, thanks a lot. Oh, and if George Lucas is hiding under a pseudonym, please come out and say hi. Last chance. Okay, he's probably not.
And Fawn, I just sent you a DM on your Facebook.
Awesome. Excellent.
No problem.
Great.
All right, well, I suppose we might leave this up for another minute or two, just so if people need to contact each other through the direct messaging, they can. But Fawn or Jeff, any last thoughts from you before we wrap this up?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. Great way to start the day. It's like official
Yeah.
holiday for us here. So
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, like I said, I'm kind of winding down my career here, and it's just one of those things. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about model making and how, you know that I not necessarily a model maker right now, but it's in my blood, and I do it every day on a personal level, but not for professional level because I'm doing CG products and things like that. But it's an amazing field. And I encourage everybody to, it's one of those stigma things that I think, growing up, it's like, what are you going to do with an art major? That's what I was always told. How are you going to make money being an art major? Right. And don't listen to your parents. You got, like, I'm sure Fawn will tell you, it's got to, the reason you work hard is because you're having fun doing it. And having fun in your job is the most important thing you can do in your life. And it doesn't matter, like I said, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just, if you do approach stuff with passion, it's going to be an amazing experience. And you're going to meet some amazing people along the journey. And this is just one way of doing it through this APMM.
Well, that was beautifully said. Thank you for that.
Hmm.
All right, well, I hope you all have a really wonderful afternoon, and I'm honored on behalf of the APMM that you all joined us today. And hopefully you have a great rest of your day.
All right. May the force be with you.
And also with you.
Thanks, Jeff and Fawn. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Sam,